Before we begin, take 1 second to support the channel. Subscribe right now, press like, and share your thoughts in the comments. The question today is simple but serious. Should military leaders ever push back against a president's orders? Stay with this report, because what is being discussed right now inside Washington is raising very big questions. Something unusual is happening inside Washington tonight, and people across the country are starting to pay attention. New reports coming out of the Pentagon suggest that several top generals are pushing back against direct orders linked to President Donald Trump. The reports say military leaders inside the building are quietly refusing to move forward with certain instructions. If that is true, it is not just another political argument. It would be something much bigger. In the United States system, the president is the commander-in-chief. That means the military answers to civilian leadership. It is one of the oldest rules in American democracy. Soldiers do not run the country. Elected leaders do. But tonight, insiders are describing tension that is growing behind closed doors. According to people familiar with the situation, senior officers are questioning whether certain orders are legal, appropriate, or safe for national security. Some reports say meetings inside the Pentagon have become heated. Voices raised, long pauses, serious looks across the table. The generals are not speaking publicly, but sources say their message inside the room is clear. They believe some decisions could place the military in a dangerous position politically. This is where things become serious. If military leaders believe an order is unlawful, they are required to question it. But if a president believes the order is lawful and insists on it, the situation can quickly become a constitutional storm. Tonight, Washington is watching closely, because if the chain of command begins to crack, even slightly, the consequences could ripple far beyond the Pentagon walls. And the biggest question right now is this: what exactly were those orders? And why are some of the most powerful military leaders in America suddenly refusing to follow them? To understand why this story matters so much, people first need to understand how the system is supposed to work. The United States military runs on a very clear chain of command. Orders move from the President to the Secretary of Defense, then down through generals, commanders, and finally to the troops on the ground. That chain is designed to be strong and unbroken. But tonight, reports suggest something unusual is happening right near the top of that chain. Sources inside Washington say several Pentagon leaders are raising strong concerns about specific directives connected to President Trump. The details of those directives are still emerging, but the tension around them is already clear. Military leaders are trained to follow lawful orders without hesitation. That is how armies function. Discipline, structure, and obedience are the backbone of any military force. But there is also another rule that is just as important. The U.S. military must refuse unlawful orders. That line between lawful and unlawful can sometimes become very difficult to judge in real time. And when that happens, disagreements inside the Pentagon can grow quickly. According to reports circulating tonight, some generals believe certain proposed actions could draw the military into political conflicts that traditionally stay outside military control. Others worry about how the orders might affect alliances, global stability, or the reputation of American forces around the world. Behind closed doors, these conversations are said to be intense. Careful words, legal questions, long discussions about duty, responsibility, and the Constitution. Meanwhile, outside those walls, the public is only starting to hear whispers of the disagreement. But one thing is already clear. When senior generals begin pushing back against presidential orders, Washington knows the situation has entered very serious territory. The tension building tonight inside the Pentagon is not just about one order or one disagreement. It touches something deeper inside the American system. Civilian control of the military is one of the most important principles in the United States government. From the very beginning of the country, leaders wanted to make sure the armed forces would never control political power. The president is elected by the people. Generals are not. That balance has held for generations. But moments of tension have happened before. In history, there have been times when presidents and military leaders strongly disagreed about strategy, war plans, or national security decisions. Sometimes those disagreements stayed private. Other times, they exploded into public view. Tonight, Washington is wondering if this situation could become one of those moments. Reports suggest that some generals are not openly rebelling, but they are slowing down decisions, asking for legal reviews, and refusing to move quickly on certain directives. That kind of quiet resistance can send a powerful message. It signals that leaders inside the military believe the situation deserves deeper scrutiny before action is taken. Supporters of President Trump argue that the commander-in-chief must have full authority to direct the military. They say hesitation from generals could weaken national leadership. But critics see the situation very differently. They argue that questioning orders is exactly what responsible military leaders must do when legal or constitutional concerns appear. And that is why this story is now growing beyond the Pentagon. Lawmakers in Washington are starting to ask questions. National security experts are speaking on television, and many Americans are wondering whether the disagreement behind those closed doors could turn into a much larger political battle. Inside Washington tonight, one phrase is being repeated again and again: chain of command. That phrase may sound simple, but it carries enormous weight. Every soldier in the United States military is trained to respect the chain of command. Orders move downward, and responsibility moves upward. It is a system designed to prevent confusion, chaos, and personal power struggles. But when tension begins at the very top, the entire structure can feel the pressure. According to emerging reports, Pentagon leaders are carefully reviewing the instructions connected to President Trump's directives. Legal teams inside the Department of Defense are also said to be examining the situation. That step alone tells observers something important. It means the issue is serious enough to require legal interpretation, not just military planning. Some experts say the generals may simply be doing what the law requires. If an order raises constitutional concerns, military leaders must pause and evaluate it carefully. Others worry that disagreement could deepen divisions inside Washington. Politics is already highly polarized. If the military becomes caught in that political storm, the consequences could be unpredictable. For decades, the U.S. Armed Forces have tried to remain separate from partisan fights. The military is meant to protect the country, not choose political sides. That is why tonight's reports are raising so many eyebrows across the Capitol. Because even the suggestion that generals are refusing presidential directives touches a nerve inside the American political system. And people across the country are asking the same question. Is this a normal internal disagreement? Or is something much larger beginning to unfold behind the walls of the Pentagon? As this situation continues to develop, one fact remains clear. Very little official information has been confirmed publicly. The Pentagon has not released a full statement explaining the reported disagreement. Military leaders are known for handling sensitive issues quietly, especially when national security is involved. But silence can also create more questions. Political leaders in Washington are now demanding answers. Some lawmakers want briefings about the situation. Others say Congress may need to examine whether the chain of command is functioning the way it should. Meanwhile, supporters of President Trump argue that the commander-in-chief must be able to direct military policy without internal resistance. They warn that hesitation from generals could send a signal of weakness to adversaries around the world. On the other side of the debate, critics say the military has a duty to question orders that might cross legal or constitutional boundaries. In their view, careful scrutiny protects the country rather than undermines it. That debate is now spreading quickly across television networks, political circles, and social media. But the most important conversations are still happening behind closed doors inside the Pentagon. Senior officers, legal experts, and defense officials are examining every detail of the reported orders and their possible consequences. The outcome of those discussions could shape what happens next. Because if tensions continue to grow between civilian leadership and military command, the political shockwaves could travel far beyond Washington. And tonight, Americans are watching closely, waiting for the next move in a story that is still unfolding. Now the story is beginning to spread far beyond the Pentagon. Late reports say officials across Washington are demanding urgent briefings about the situation. Members of Congress want to know exactly what orders were given, who questioned them, and why military leaders felt the need to push back. Behind closed doors, lawmakers from both parties are asking a serious question. Has the disagreement between the White House and Pentagon leadership reached a breaking point? National security experts say moments like this are extremely rare. Most disagreements between presidents and military leaders stay private. They are handled quietly through meetings, legal reviews, and internal discussions. But when reports of resistance reach the public, it signals something unusual. Some analysts believe the generals involved are trying to protect the military from becoming part of a political conflict. They argue that once the armed forces appear to take sides in political battles, trust in the institution could be damaged. Others believe the situation may simply be a misunderstanding that is growing larger because of rumors and leaks. Still, the tension is real. Inside defense circles tonight, people are speaking carefully but watching closely. Conversations are happening at the highest levels of government. Every word matters. Every decision matters. Because if the chain of command begins to fracture, even slightly, it can send a powerful message not only inside the United States, but also to allies and rivals around the world. And that is why this developing situation is being treated with such urgency. The stakes are not only political, they are national. While Washington debates what is happening, another concern is quietly growing. How will America's allies react? Around the world, many countries depend on the stability of U.S. military leadership. American forces operate in dozens of regions. They work closely with partner nations, share intelligence, and coordinate defense strategies. When uncertainty appears inside the command structure, international leaders begin asking questions. Diplomats and foreign policy experts say allies may be watching this situation very carefully. They want reassurance that the U.S. military chain of command remains strong and unified. At the same time, rivals of the United States are also paying attention. Nations that compete with American power often study moments of political tension. They look for signs of weakness, division, or confusion. That is why stability inside the Pentagon is so important. Military leadership must appear disciplined, united, and focused. Even small signs of disagreement can attract global attention. Experts say this is one reason why Pentagon officials usually handle internal disputes quietly. They know the entire world is watching. But tonight, because reports have begun circulating publicly, the story is growing larger by the hour. Questions are spreading across media and networks. Political leaders are making statements, and Americans are starting to realize that something serious may be unfolding inside the country's most powerful defense institution. The next steps taken by both the White House and Pentagon leaders could determine whether this tension fades quietly or grows into a major political confrontation. Now, another layer of the story is emerging. Legal experts are beginning to weigh in. Former military lawyers say the situation may come down to one central question. Were the orders in question lawful under the Constitution and U.S. military law? Every officer in the armed forces takes an oath to defend the Constitution. That oath is not just symbolic. It carries legal responsibility. If a military leader believes an order clearly violates the law, that leader must refuse it. But proving that an order crosses that line is not always simple. Sometimes it requires careful legal review, detailed analysis, and long discussions between defense officials and government lawyers. That process can take time. According to sources familiar with the Pentagon environment, those types of reviews may be happening right now. Legal teams could be examining every word of the directives, studying past precedent, and determining what actions are permitted under the law. Until those questions are answered, some military leaders may choose to delay action. That delay can appear like resistance, even if the goal is simply caution. Still, the political impact is growing. Supporters of President Trump say the commander-in-chief must be able to lead decisively, without hesitation, from military officials. Critics argue that careful legal review protects democracy. This debate is now unfolding in real time, and the nation is watching closely. Tonight, attention is also turning toward the White House. So far, there's been no detailed public explanation from the administration about the reported disagreements. Officials have not confirmed exactly what instructions were given or how military leaders responded. But political pressure is increasing. Reporters are asking questions. Lawmakers are requesting briefings. And defense analysts are trying to piece together what may be happening behind the scenes. Some insiders believe the situation could still be resolved quietly through internal discussions. That has happened many times before in American history. The presidents and generals can disagree strongly, but eventually reach a compromise or clarification. Others believe that disagreement could grow larger if both sides hold firm to their positions. If that happens, the conflict could move from private meetings into the public political arena. That would raise the temperature in Washington dramatically, because once military command decisions become part of open political debate, the entire nation begins to feel the tension. For now, officials appear to be moving carefully. Every statement is measured. Every word is chosen with caution, because leaders on all sides understand that the stakes are extremely high, and the world is watching how America handles this moment. As this breaking story continues to unfold, one thing is certain: the coming hours and days will be critical. If the reported disagreement between Pentagon leaders and President Trump is resolved quietly, the story may fade into the background of Washington politics. But if the divide grows deeper, the consequences could reshape the national conversation about military power, presidential authority, and the balance built into the American system. Civilian control of the military has been a foundation of the United States for generations. At the same time, the military's duty to follow the Constitution remains equally important. When those two principles collide, the result can be tense, complicated, and historic. Tonight, officials across Washington are watching closely. Inside the Pentagon, discussions are likely continuing behind closed doors. Inside the White House, advisors are likely reviewing the situation carefully. And across the country, Americans are asking the same simple question: what exactly is happening inside the highest levels of U.S. leadership? For now, the full story is still developing. More information could emerge at any moment. But one fact is already clear. This situation has captured the attention of the entire nation. And whatever happens next could become one of the most closely watched political and military moments in recent memory. Stay tuned, because this story is still unfolding.